I just want to thank Sukanya ma'am for this. I can remember, guys, madam was sneezing and she was having fever, and completely I can remember that day, ma'am. And also, I can remember, and she took almost 1.5 hour call with the same condition. Okay, I was really grateful for that, madam. Thank you so much for helping me out.
Welcome, guys, to the answer writing session where we'll be doing live answer writing today. And I am Sukanya Rana. I basically head the mains program at Civilsdaily, and I am also their faculty for ethics program. So, guys, today we'll be focusing on what is a basic structure with respect to answer writing. What are the major essential that you need to look into? Right? Especially for 24 guys, I think you guys might have content which is building right now. Okay? Obviously, your content is not going to be very, very perfect at this point of time. From 23 guys, I do expect a good content to be there. But again, we'll be focusing more on structure and presentation. Right? Content is something that we can develop. But art of understanding the question and how do you write the question is something that we'll be focusing in this particular session. Right? How can this webinar be helpful for you? So I've basically created two formats, 23 guys and 24 guys. For 23 guys, you just have 3 months of time to wrap it up, to wrap your preparation. So basically in these 3 months, if you spend too much of time on revising in the sense, keep picking up material, picking up the book after book after, then it is going to be a very difficult battle for you in mains. If you're appearing for mains 2023, then you need to focus more on revisions, PYQ, and writing test, right? To be very, very specific, improving the structures of your answer is something very important, because ultimately, see, it does not matter how many books you read. What matters is how much of content you can present on those 2 pages. Right? How do you structure your answer on those 2 pages is something that is important. So yes, this will also show you what is the importance of mentoring in this last few weeks with respect to your papers. So again, I would personally advise to always have a mentor so that you can discuss your answers with that particular mentor. For 24 guys, again, the faster you start, it is better. I wouldn't consider it very fast because June is like one. Until February, you study mains, right? So you have July, August, September, October, November, December, January, Feb, somewhat roughly 8 to 9 months that is left with you for your preparation, not more than that. Okay? In this 8 to 9 months, you have to wrap up the whole 10 years of PYQ. You have to wrap up whole answer writing, prepare a proper structure, framework, so that when you're writing mains next year, you're not stuck in a situation where you suddenly like, acha, now I have to read mains 365, pick up those 800 pages and suddenly start reading it. I have to even prepare the structure of my answers. Those kind of situations should not happen in your preparation when you're writing mains next year. And also, it will allow you to orient your preparation according to how the demand of the mains answer writing is. All right. So that is something which is going to benefit all of you guys with respect to mains answer writing. Okay, guys, these are the common instructions that we are going to be following in this particular challenge. So number one thing is there are going to be 4 questions that I'm going to give you. It will be from GS 1, 2, 3, and 4. Majorly, I've kept important topics, like from 2, I'll be giving you a question on polity. From 3, I am giving you a question on economics. I've kept the broader core subjects for these particular questions. Again, the difficulty level is not very, very high of these questions, but it will help you. These are more of a conceptual based questions. So I think that means it will test your knowledge. Number one. Second thing is, please keep your sheet and a pen and a paper with you, because you will be writing the answers for the next 30 minutes. Okay? Questions will flash in front of you, and then you'll be looking at the question. You don't have to write the question. You can just write the answer. Okay? So that when I am discussing the question with you, you're able to check whether you've written those points or not. So keep 4 sheets with you, because one sheet is going to have 2 sides. For 10 marker, you need 2 sides, right? So keep 4 sheets at least handy with you where you can write the answers. Next is every question is going to have 10 marks. So it's a 10 marker question, guys. 10 marker means for every question, you are going to have 7 minutes given to you, right? So 7 minutes is something that you will get. So total becomes 28 plus 2 minutes extra time I'm giving you. So totally it becomes 30 minutes, right? Again, next thing is I would advise you guys to, kind of switch on your cameras so that when you're writing, I can see in the, video that you're properly writing and you're not looking at books, you're not looking at other content. You are genuinely writing the answers, right? So that there's a sense of accountability, I think, attached to it. Okay? So be very careful about that. And as soon as the timer goes on, like when the next slide is going to come, after this, I'll tell you when the timer starts. So you just start writing. I will not. We have a break. Okay? You're just writing answers continuously. Okay? So these are the common details. Any other details that you need to know about the program, I've given the number. Niche idhar pe Ankur and Priyanka. You can connect with them. Okay? Also, guys, I have taken the question from our RMG series. These are proper questions from our test series. Okay? So if you are somebody who's already enrolled, you'll see the common pattern here. Okay? So, chalo guys, I think it's already 10 minutes up. So whoever wanted to join could have joined. I can see multiple people have actually switched on their camera, but few people have not again switched on. It's all right. I mean, I would push you to do switch on your camera so that continuously I can see whether you're writing or not. But even if you're not comfortable, please make sure that you write it very honestly. You stick to the timing. Don't look at the web. Don't look at the, any kind of books. Just write proper answers. Okay? So I am basically setting a timer for 30 minutes. Just a moment. Okay, so I've set the timer. I just have to press stop. Guys, please get your pen and paper because we are starting with the paper. The next slide is going to have question number 1 and 2 from GS 1 and 2. As soon as there's something around 15 minutes, I'll shift you to the next slide, right? According to the timing, I'll keep on changing the slide so that you can continue with the question, right? So that is the pattern that is going to go. So guys, we are starting with the answer writing and okay, guys, all the best. And then see you on the other side now. Start, guys, please. So guys, we are done with 30 minutes. Please wrap up whatever you're writing. The time is over. They say you got 2 minutes extra. The UPSC guys will not give you that also. Okay. So I hope you were able to, compile certain level of answers in this question. Okay. Again, I would say they were not very, very difficult question. But I would place them in medium level of difficulty. Not that easy also and not that difficult. Okay. So our next step is going to be that, see, I cannot see everybody's answer, what they've written here, obviously. So I will be discussing what normal problems that I see in these answers of the student. Please compare your answer with what I'm talking about. Okay? And I also will be outlining what should have been part of your introduction, what should have been part of your body, and what should have been part of your conclusion. So just match. Again, see, if I say there should be a definition, then I'm not saying that this particular definition should come. Okay? Exact content will never match for every student, right? But at least if I'm saying that there should be a definition of smart agriculture in the introduction, then you please check whether you've written a definition of smart agriculture or not. Okay, so these kind of things we'll look into and we'll understand how the question is supposed to be answered, right? And if you have any doubt, like after one question, like when we've done with GS1 question, if you have any doubt, just raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself, and then we can discuss your doubt on that. Okay? Chalo guys. So let's look at the first question here. Okay, it was not a very difficult question. I would consider that. Okay, because again, see, the idea of Gadar party is something which is known to all of us. Okay, अब देखो question क्या है? Question is that the 1950 Gadar plan was to free India from British was a failure, but it still sparked a revolution. And the tail word is discuss. ठीक है, तो number one thing here guys, see if you divide, see कोई भी question है GS 1 2 3 4, आपका proper structure रहेगा introduction, body, conclusion. ठीक है, introduction should have an independent content as compared to your body, and your conclusion should also have an independent content as compared from your body. ठीक है, तो अगर किसी ने इंट्रोडक्शन में ये लिखा है कि गदर प्लान वाज इंस्टीट्यूटेड इन 1915 and it was a very important part of independence, that is not fetching you any marks. जो क्वेश्चन में स्टेटमेंट दिया है, if you're directly copying into your introduction, then that is not adding any value in the introduction. ठीक है, इंट्रोडक्शन में वैल्यू कैसे आएगी? सबसे पहले आप मुझे बताओ गदर मूवमेंट था क्या? टेल मी व्हाट इज गदर मूवमेंट. ठीक है, so if any of you have mentioned about the year it was set up, the leaders associated with it, ठीक है, we've got Lala Hardyal, we've got Sohan Singh Bakhana, ठीक है, the president and everything, ठीक है. So and if you've mentioned it was set up in San Francisco and all these things, then you've covered the basic details on Gadar movement. ठीक है, so if you've included these points, that means introduction, in the first part of the introduction you've covered the major value addition, right? Then comes the second portion. See, the question is asking 1915 Gadar plan. So once you've explained me what is the Gadar party or what is the Gadar movement, then you move on to the second part of the introduction, which is what was the Gadar plan of 1915, right? So here you're going to talk about that Komagata Maru and everything, right? So in the introduction, guys, you need to have two portions. Just check out. And again, be very, very careful that you need to mention these value addition points. यहाँ पे properly leader के names should be there. The year should be there. Komagata Maru. These are key terms. These are highlighters, right? They should be mentioned in your answer. Only then that is a very good introduction. Okay. So that was about introduction in this particular answer. Then you move to the body. See, guys, as you read the question, obviously the first portion is 1950 Gadar plan. So that automatically comes in our body. The next portion, what was the next portion? Two things it's asking. It was a failure, right? Also, second part, it's saying that it sparked a revolution. So automatically your body should have two major headings. Number one, why the movement was a failure, right? And second thing is how it still sparked the revolution or how it was not a failure. Okay? Whatever heading you want to pick up, you can pick up from the question also. There's no issue if you're picking up headings from the question. Just don't copy paste the question in the introduction. All right. So in the body, two major core, I'm saying core need is number one, why it was a failure. Number two, why it sparked a revolution. Okay? If you want, you can add one non-core portion. Okay? What is that non-core portion is, since you're talking about why it was a failure or why it was not able to achieve its objective, just make a small diagram of telling me what were its objective actually, right? Only then you can move on. Like it will create a link in the answer. Now, first you lay down what were the objective of this Gadar plan and how did it fail to achieve this objective, right? It will create that consistency. But again, objective is not a core demand in the question. So you cannot spend too much time and space on it. That is where the idea of flowchart and diagram comes into play, right? So if you make a small diagram, maybe lay down 4 major objectives and you're done with it. Okay? Let's move on to our core demand. Now, the first core demand is why it failed to achieve its objective, right? So again, guys, whenever you're writing any answer, see, this was a major heading. Try to create sub-points under it. Okay? Sub-points in the sense, make sure you tell me about, different aspects with respect to it. How, it was not like the ultimate aim of, bringing the British Raj down. So the ultimate aim failed, right? The immediate aim also, starting a revolution, that also failed. So create these points, these sub-points in the answer, and that is how you need to answer the first question, right? Again, a 10 marker should at least have 8 to 12 good points. So if you're dividing your answer, like I have divided my answer into 2 core portion and 1 non-core portion. So if I say I get 2 marks for non-core portion, then at least 4 points under these core headings I need to write, right? So that means 4 different dimensions under these specific heading, why it was a failure and why it sparked a revolution, right? Then you move to the second heading, again, the same idea. Number 1, how it was very secular in nature, why it sparked a revolution, right? So you are basically talking about its positive contribution. So you can talk about the secular aspect, you can talk about how it gave an international outlook, right? You can also talk about how, it basically transformed these communist and peasant leaders towards the, freedom struggle, right? So these kind of things you can kind of associate with how it did spark, sparked some revolution in India, right? So that is the second part with respect to the body. Now, what comes in the conclusion? So guys, a lot of people, they face problem with writing conclusion in history. Because again, in conclusion, tendency of the students is usually to write a way forward, right? And that works in GS2 and that works in GS3. In fact, that can also work in GS4. But with respect to history, it becomes very difficult. So usually, guys, in history, the major frameworks we keep is either we cover an aspect which is not given. For example, had we've not been talked about the significance of Gadar Party in the body and the introduction, we could have included that in the conclusion, right? So number 1 thing is what you can do is pick up some important aspect that is missing and try to bring that in conclusion. That is one option. But we've majorly covered everything here. Second option is you can talk about the legacy of this particular Gadar movement, right? So guys, if you have been in touch with current affairs now, you know that, even the Canadian Prime Minister had actually said sorry in the parliament regarding this particular whole incident. Okay? So that is the kind of legacy this particular incident still holds. Okay? So that kind of legacy, like the present times, this is something that you can quote in your answer. That will show the linkage of history to current affairs also. Sometimes you can quote your history related things to government scheme, right? It depends. Like if you're talking about B.R. Ambedkar, you can talk about how he is still an important part in the political system, right? B.R. Ambedkar is still an important part. We've, like the government this year had made his birthday a compulsory holiday, right? So these are the common current affair things which you can actually link in your history questions and bring it in the conclusion, because it will show the examiner that you have grasp over even the historical events of how they are relevant even today, right? So that gets another dimension in your answer, which is very interesting for the examiner. Okay? So that was the way that you had to deal with this particular answer. So guys, any doubts on this, or did anybody write very close to what I was talking about? If anyone has any doubts, okay, I have a couple of doubts here. So in history, in case of conclusion, we can link with, yes, Syed, you can link with current affairs, you can link with government scheme. Sometimes you can also link with thinkers. Like if say there's a question on Mahatma Gandhi and you want to add a quote with respect to Mahatma Gandhi, you can do that in the conclusion, right? So that thing can also be done here. So these are a couple of tricks you can apply in the conclusion, because usually what happens in history, we end up writing very, very lame conclusions. Like many of the people would have written here, so Gadar party was an important part of our independence struggle, and that is how it contributed to, bringing a revolution in India. That kind of conclusion is not fetching you any marks, right? So try to make sure that you are adding some kind of value addition in the point, so that the examiner is also like, okay, this is something different. I've not read this in the last 15 to 20 copies. That is how you'll get marks. The differentiator today is very, very important. Everybody has read Gadar party from spectrum, right? But how will your answer differentiate? That is the value addition you need to work on, guys. If you're planning for 24, then you have good amount of time. But if you're writing the paper in 23, start quickly making, short notes of such important points which have been there in the previous years also. Okay, that is very, very important. My body looks similar, but the time limit is there, so not able to think such points. Yes, Himanshu. The idea is that ultimately, see, we can get a lot of time and our quality would be supreme, but ultimately it's the time pressure which, takes a toll on our answer. So yes, answer writing for you is very, very important in this sense. 14 points, Chita. Okay, that is also good. Yes, you can link to that current affairs also. Can we tell about other movements similar to Gadar? Plan as a conclusion. Give me an example, Saran. Like if you're talking about, say, revolutionary movements of 1920s and 1940s, you can say like that is also a part of how the Gadar movement actually influenced other revolutionary movement to start. Okay? But again, make sure that that is just as a one-liner point. Okay? Because see, the more value addition you do, the better it is. So if you're able to write how it influenced the immediate history, like just in 1940s, and how today also it's influencing, that is even better. Okay? Right. Yes, Anushilan and Yugantar. Okay. Himanshu, I think Anushilan is way ahead. Like that is very starting of the revolutionary movement. In conclusion, I wrote it did not has all India impact. Okay, guys, don't be negative in the conclusion. That is also one more thing. Because you already got a portion in the body where you had to criticize this particular Gadar movement. You don't answer or end your question on a very negative note. That shows very bad on your part. Try to be more positive in the outlook, right? Try to be more innovative in the conclusion. That is very, very important. Post reaction to Lala. See, again, Syed, this is, I don't think that is necessary in the conclusion, because it's a small incident when you're talking about Bhagat Singh and all those things. I think it's a very, very small incident. Maybe you can bring it as a, example of how it was not a failure. Okay? The Bhagat Singh incident can be used as an example. Inclusions in minimal words. I'm not able to understand what you're talking. Conclusion in minimal words. Okay, so conclusion, Himanshu, like I said, you can talk about that. There are multiple things that I've highlighted, right? I've highlighted that Canada wala thing. Somebody's written that newspaper Chitta wala thing. Then we've also got the immediate history of revolution. Whatever you want to pick up, you can pick up that and write in the answer. Okay? Only active movement happening in the World War I against the Britisher. Okay, Chandrasekhar, I think you can extend it. Like I said, the more points, the more ideas, the more diverse your answer it, you'll get more points. It's all right if you've written just one point, but future references, start collecting as many diverse points as you can. That will enrich your answer. Okay? That is the major idea here. All right, let's move on to the next question. because that is also a very, very interesting question. I've got Abhay linking current affairs to other affair can also be written in the body as a reference. That will come as an example, Abhay. You cannot create a point, say, Canada Prime Minister had said sorry, because that is not, something that is asked in the question. The body has to be linked to the topic. If the topic is history, then your core content should come from history as a subject only. If the topic is polity, then your body's core content should come from polity as a core subject. Current affairs only comes as an example justifying the point that you've written. Be very careful here. Okay? Current affairs again are majorly used as an example to justify the points that you've written. So that ways, if you can link, good enough. Right. So we're shifting to the next question. Okay. This was also a very interesting and tricky question, actually. I think the first statement is something which actually puts a lot of people in confusion. Okay. If I talk about the body, straightly, 3 are the major core portions, right? If I talk about introduction, again, like I said in introduction, this is GS2. So what all things you can do in introduction? It's talking about poverty as a core subject. So maybe if you want, you can start with defining poverty. And poverty is a very common term in the syllabus. So maybe when you're creating your value addition notes, jot down UNESCO or United Nations definition of poverty, so that when you're writing the definition of poverty, you just write as per United Nations, poverty is defined. Won't it look much more better than any other aspirant copy? Okay? So this is the value addition that you should start working upon. Okay? Another thing that you can do here is, again, when you're talking about poverty, if you want to link it to current affairs, there are so many different indexes. Okay? We've got multiple, what do you call that, poverty index wala thing. Multi-dimensional poverty index is there. Okay? You can bring in the idea of poverty line here. Okay? So current affairs wise, also you can link it to many indexes or something like that. There were multiple reports also, like there was a report by United Nations where it talked about how India had removed 250 million people out of the poverty line. Okay? It's a bit older, but again, the idea is same, right? Rahul, if you're not able to hear, please reconnect again, because I think I'm audible to other students. Okay? So yes, the idea is, if you can see these common terms like poverty, malnutrition, hunger, these are there in your syllabus. Microfinance, these kind of terms. So when you have something which is already outlined, make sure you have very, very, good definitions attached to it. I'm not saying very elaborate, like 3 lines or 4 lines definition, just 2 lines definition, but from a verified source, so that your introduction looks different from somebody's else. Okay? So that is about introduction. So what all you can do, you can bring in World Bank here. It's data with respect to poverty. The definition is also there. If you want to quote multi-dimensional poverty index, that can also be done. Okay? Whatever you want to bring in, just bring in. Again, you can quote thinkers also. Like we've got multiple thinkers talking about poverty, like Amartya Sen and these people. So that can also be done. But again, that is dependent upon your choice. Obviously, you cannot have all of these. You will have to pick and choose. Okay? But these are various options that is available to you. I've got a couple of questions. Abhay is saying, according to poverty index, yes, you can do that. I just said ki definition can be maybe according to an index. It can also be according to Amartya Sen. It can also be according to United Nations. Again, like I said, pick and choose one and stick with it, revise it properly. Okay? Yes, Oxfam report. Yes, you can write that. Again, the idea is definition plus 1 or 2 current affair data, good enough for the introduction. Okay? So that was your introduction. Next comes your body. Okay? Our body may see, the first question is asking critically analyze. So if you look at the first portion, they are actually both opposite of each other. So automatically, if you explain both the part of the statement, you are actually critically analyzing the whole thing. Okay? So what is the statement? Number 1 part of the statement is, कि how there is no development which causes poverty. Okay, that is the first part. Why, lack of development is causing poverty. That is the first thing that you had to tell me, and 4-5 points under it. And the second point you had to talk about is how having development can also lead to poverty. Okay, so do you understand? It's like critically analyzing both it's like presenting both the sides. You have development, even then you have poverty, and you don't have development, even then you have poverty. This is what you had to answer in the body. And guys, be very careful. 2 separate sections with 2 separate headings I needed in this. Okay, 5 points under each. People are saying, can we draw a vicious circle of the poverty? Again, Rohit, it's actually you can draw it, but again, it'll come as part of introduction, because again, you'll have to tell me why lack of development can cause poverty. So maybe, because what happens in vicious circle, you'll write 1 or 2 reasons, and then you'll make it a cycle. But why lack of development? You can give me 2-3 dimensions, na? Social, economic, political. There are so many different dimensions that you can cover. Okay, so when I'm talking about the first portion, by lack of poverty, okay guys, be very, very careful. When you're creating your points, see, education and health, if you've written separate points, then that would be counted as 1 point only. Why am I saying this? Because that comes under the broader, idea of social structure. Okay, so in answer writing, when I'm looking at points, I need multiple dimensions. Okay, so lack of development from economic angle, this is where the pestle approach comes into play. From social angles, where maybe you can talk about, say, education, you can talk about agriculture. Okay, in economy, you can talk about lack of infrastructure, you can talk about lack of investment, you can talk about. Okay, then maybe the third point, the political tumult. In the sense, you get more civil wars when there's lack of development. Take the example of Africa. Okay? Take the example of, say, even in India, where there's no political stability, when there's a lack of development, you see more unpolitical stable scenarios. Okay? So that political scenario you can link here. Okay, you can also talk about other things, like you can say connect to the historical reason also. Okay, that is also one portion. That is not a very major portion, but that will also give you another dimension. So if you have had just say colonial wala exploitation wala jo funda tha, you can link it here also, like how it has continued, lack of development, and we still have poverty that is attached to it. Okay, a lot of people are writing inequality. Guys, that will come in the second part, not this part. If you've written inequality in lack of development, then that is wrong. Because it has not got, because if you do not have inequality, how is if you do not have development, how is inequality dealing here? Okay, the first portion may you'll talk about lack of investment, you can talk about lack of agricultural infrastructure or infrastructure in general. You can talk about poor linkages from social areas like education, health, skill wise, these kind of things. Okay, technological breach you can talk about. So these are the basic things that you can talk about, how it promotes more and more poverty. Okay, use as many example. India may northeast and versus the western good, like metro cities, you can bring in as an example. You can bring Africa as an example here. Okay, so there are so many different examples that you can bring in. Jay is asking, what is the full form of pestle? Jay, it's political, economic, social, technological, legislative, and environment. Okay, these are basically dimensions that you can cover. The second portion here is why you have development and yet you are not able to clear the idea of poverty. Now this is where you come into talking about inequality. You talk about limited sources. You talk about even globalization. Okay, how globalization is bringing development, but again what it is doing is blue collar jobs are going to one portion and the wealth is going to one portion. Okay, you can talk about that, money moving out of the economies, taxes scam, and all these kind of things. Okay, so that you can talk about. Climate change and misuse of resources you can talk about. Okay, like you have development, but because of climate change, there are certain countries who still remain or face the brunt of climate change. They still remain poor. Okay, women-related point you can bring in as a separate point here. Guys, if somebody is not mute, please mute. Some people are not. Guys, yes. So that kind of angle is something you can bring in the second section. Okay, so second section, you are highlighting points of, yes, Jay has written good points here. Failure of trickle down, GDP oriented, not lack. Rich can enjoy the products. Okay, digital divide. Okay, digital divide, I think you can bring in the first part, not the second, but I think first part, because see, again, when you're talking about equality, so inequality, so maybe you can bring in multiple angles with respect to it. Okay, so again, multiple areas, like you can talk about unorganized sector, article, the topic of gig and platform economy. These are the things that you can bring in. The changing nature of the economy as such, and then you can bring 2-3 points like globalization as a 1 point. Then you can talk about gig economy and platform. So what is happening under 1 point? 2-3 major points are covered. So Jay is talking about crony capitalism. Yes, corruption as a point you can bring in 1. That is where you can talk about crony capitalism also, and you can talk about round tripping and tax evasion, these kind of things. So under 1 point, 2-3 points you are actually covering. Because see, ultimately under each heading, you'll be able to just highlight 5 major points. So if you can bring 2-3 dimension under those 5 major points, your amount of content and value addition will increase. Okay, so that was about second point. And then we have the third point, which is remedial measures. Okay, guys, you have to identify here कि usually in the conclusion we talk about way forward. Okay, and way forward is actually somewhat how the system can be reformed. Okay, so part of your conclusion will actually be covered in body here, right? So what will happen in this question? You'll have a very smaller conclusion, maybe a paragraph or so. Okay, because major part of the conclusion is something that you're already covering in the body. Okay, so under remedial pressure measures, again the same principle, guys. Poverty can be improved through multiple angles. Bring economic angles under one heading. Okay, just say if you want to talk about some governmental welfare scheme, so if you talk about direct income subsidies or you talk about welfare scheme, bring all of them together because these are government related measures. Okay, second, maybe the social related measures where you can talk about health and education, these kind of things. Okay, third, again, that might be the international dimension we can talk about, like with respect to investment and taking care of this invasions and all those things, and corruption related. Okay, I think corruption can come under social awareness also. And again, give examples here, guys, because see, we've got multiple countries who've come out of poverty. Like if you want to talk about technology, talk about Japan, talk about Singapore, who came out of poverty because of the technological streak that they had. Like the Asian tigers, right? You can quote here. Their model you can quote in the remedial measure. Okay? Then there are certain countries who are coming out of poverty because of their social measures. Take example, Bangladesh. Okay? So Bangladesh is actually working on social measures with respect to, say, their sanitation program, health, education, supporting the small businesses. Even India, you can, kind of bring in those areas. Okay? Third, maybe if you're talking about boosting the economy, you can talk about various, African countries where they're talking about investment from outer countries. They're talking about tourism. So basically developing these sectors. Okay? So these are the way through which you justify your points. Okay, so be very careful. If you've written such examples, then I think it would be a very good body. Okay, so again, the idea is heading plus example is something that dictates the quality of your answers. Okay? Everybody knows Asian tigers, but I'm pretty sure that very less people would have quoted that in the answer. Okay? So these are the small changes that you need to work upon. See, for the first time, answer might not be perfect. But if you're revising the topic, like for the next time, if you have to write an answer on poverty, you should have such value addition already with you. Okay? That is how you improve in this paper. Okay? Now talking about conclusion, again, guys, I told you conclusion is something that is already that we've written in the body. Okay? We've covered major part of way forward in the body. So conclusion, what do you utilize conclusion here? Again, that depends upon your introduction also. Like if you've not adopted a government scheme in the introduction, bring that in the conclusion. Okay? If you've not written that UN report that India has, removed this much amount of people from poverty line, then bring that in the conclusion. If you have any new, like the government has talked about certain new scheme with respect to removing poverty, bring that angle here. Even what you can do, guys, sometimes the prime minister, if he's making certain statement with respect to poverty or something like that, and you read it in the newspaper, just jot it down. Okay? That can be part of your conclusion. Okay? So that is something that, that will fetch you, even if you write 3-4 lines. I think if you write this answer, you'll not have space of more than 5-6 lines for your conclusion. So in that 5-6 lines, if you mention a government scheme, you mention a dialogue by, say, prime minister, then obviously it's a very well-rounded conclusion. Okay? So that is one thing that you can talk about. If you want to go philosophical, then maybe you can quote Gandhiji. You can talk about how, it's the responsibility of civil servants or people to remove, the talisma wala concept. Your policy should be engaged by looking at the most poorest face that you remember. So that is a philosophical way. But I would say even if you want to quote philosophical theories here, stick to 1 or 2 lines. Don't waste your time on explaining it too much. Okay? Giving me 2-3 dimensions is always better than just writing down one. That is the golden rule for mains answer writing. So I've got Rangarajan committee. Yes, you can write. There are multiple power committees with respect to poverty. We've got a long list of committees. You can write that also. Yes, Tandulkar committee. How do we need to tell both what and how it needs to be done, or just what the part? I did not get the question, Jay, here. Like in what you're talking about? You're talking about the body or the conclusion? What you're talking about here? Ma'am, can you share a sample handwritten answer to know the presentation of the answer? Content is good, but such vast content, how to accommodate within the word limit? Right, Rohit, I'll have to search out copies right now because I don't have handwritten answers right now with me. But maybe if I have your email IDs, I'll pick up some good copies and email you guys with respect to that copies also. Okay? Jay is asking way forward part. Example, increase in awareness or increase awareness about running grassroots campaign against panchayat. Reason for poverty and best remedial measure. In the sense like how, you're asking with respect to remedial measures, how it needs to be. Okay, so your remedial measures should look like what things we can apply in order to reduce poverty, right? So if you're talking about a government scheme, how that government scheme can be improved upon, or how that government scheme can be applied, or these measures can be applied in order to remove poverty. Okay, we're talking about how poverty can be removed here, not the development part that you're focusing in remedial measures. Okay. People are asking how to wrap up the question on time. Honestly speaking, write as many answers as you can and practice as much answer writing as you can. Okay, people write hundreds and hundreds of answers. that is when they get the exact timing, you know, they manage time and quality with it. Like I personally have written like 500 answers in my optional. That is how I was able to score so good in my optional. So that is the trick ultimately. The more answers you write, get it evaluated, take reviews, and keep on writing. Okay? Ultimately, it's like your answer writing skill that needs to be developed. As a conclusion, is it okay to write old schemes also? Yes, Saran, there's no issue in including old scheme also. Okay, you can include old scheme, but again, stick to that fundamental principle. Just mention it as a 1 or 2 liner. That's it. Okay, the more angles you can bring in, say for example, if you're writing PM Rozgar Yojana, okay, and acha, be very careful. It should be existing scheme, something not defect. Okay, defect scheme आप नहीं उठा सकते हो. तो आपने जैसे 5 लाइन लिखी, तो PM Rozgar Yojana would be one key term for me. So in 5 lines, at least I should see 3 key terms to me. ठीक है, 3 key terms मुझे कम से कम दिखने चाहिए. That will fetch you more marks. ठीक है. So again, the more schemes, the more angles. Say you mention a scheme also, you mention recent data or recent, you know, a poverty line related statement of the government also. So that will get me 2 key points in those 4 lines. So again, the number of marks increases proportional to that. Okay? Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next question quickly. Right. So it was a question. I think it was an easy question. Achha, number 1 mistake that people make in this answer is they don't know what smart agriculture is. Okay? They think smart agriculture is basically when you're able to include say climate saving measures, if you're able to include livelihood, the animals and all those things in the agriculture. So again, be very, very careful. See, there are multiple ideas that is coming with respect to agriculture. There's smart agriculture, there's climate smart agriculture, then there's zero-based budgeting agriculture, then there's integrated agriculture, integrated farming techniques. Okay? So number 1 principle in this question is be very, very careful that you define smart agriculture properly in the introduction. So in this question, introduction with respect to smart agriculture is very important because it's a different topic. Okay? It's kind of a new topic. So you need to explain me first in the introduction what it means. Okay? So you had to mention here that it's actually use of technology in the operations. So I should see artificial intelligence. I should see Internet of Things being used as an example here. Okay? Chahe you bring in the idea of the remote scanning of how do you detect, say, forest, or how do you detect any kind of pest infection, or with respect to irrigation, any example you can use. Okay? But bring in a proper definition, the technology names, and a proper example of how they are being applied. 1 example would do here. Yes, people have mentioned the definition. So yes, that definition is perfectly right. Again, see, drip irrigation is fine, but again, you have to you attach the idea of drip irrigation to Internet of Things here. Just having, droplets drop 1 by 1 is not smart agriculture. Smart agriculture is that it's able to, detect the quality of the soil and then make sure that the drops are coming according to the need of that particular soil health. Okay? So be very careful about it. Okay? So when you're quoting example, be very careful about it. Now, so that was part of the introduction. Okay? Not a fancy introduction needed here, but a basic introduction and to the point introduction with example would fetch you marks in this question. The next comes your body. Okay, see, if you read the question, it says, is smart agriculture the cure to ill economy? The second question is, highlight the issues in agriculture with the strategy to resolve them. So in both the questions, you can identify that issues or ill agri economy is common, right? Okay, So what you can do is you can create one section for it instead of writing it again and again, because that will create redundancy in your answer. Okay? So combine the common part of both the questions, which is what are the major issues in Indian agriculture. Okay? So deal out with it first, because only then you'll be able to answer how those issues can be resolved. Okay? So your first question or the first heading should actually talk about the issues in agriculture. Again, guys, be very careful. Whatever issues you are highlighting, make sure you are able to link it later on with the technology solutions. Okay? Because see, APMC is an issue in Indian agriculture. Okay? But again, the whole legislation part of it is something not smart agriculture is going to solve, right? So maybe you can link it to ENAM, but the whole idea of policy making and legislation is something not the demand of this question. So be very, very careful that the tone of the issues in Indian agriculture has to be tilted to technology-driven solutions. Okay? So that when you're writing later on and linking it to solutions, it makes sense. Okay? So ये एक चीज, tone of the question, आपको like you had to make that common sense intuitive guess here. Okay? So you're done with the issues, then you move on to the second part here, we subdivide it. Okay? First question, it says whether smart agriculture can solve these issues. The third is, it's asking whether what is the strategy to resolve them. Okay? So we'll create two separate sections for this. And how do you differentiate between these two separate sections is, the first part, it'll just stick to solutions with respect to smart agriculture. The second part, the resolution, this is where you'll bring the whole aspect of solutions of in agriculture. So this is where you can bring in the policy making, the administration, the legislative, everything here. Are you understanding? So advantages of how smart agriculture can resolve the problem is just one technological part, and the rest will be covered in the later portion. So you'll mention schemes here, you'll mention policies here, you'll mention international models here, which can be applied here. Okay? So that is the difference that you need to create in the body, so that the content is basically not repeating. The biggest problem that I see in this answer is, whatever they write in how smart agriculture can resolve is something that they repeat in the later portion also. Okay? So no repetition of content is required. When you're talking about smart agriculture, stick to technology-driven solutions. If you're talking about, say, production, you can talk about, how supply chain can be actually whole connected. Okay? Then you can talk about, say, quality of production. You can talk about the irrigation thing. You can talk about real-time data analysis. You can talk about remote sensing. These kind of solutions you can talk about. Soil health is also something that can work here. Okay? Can we make two columns? Yes. Yes, you can do that. That will also work. You can create two columns. No issue. I think that is also a good approach to talk about your answer. Will limitations of smart agriculture come as a heading? No, we are not talking about limitations of smart agriculture. That is not being asked in the question, Dhyaneshwar. That is like a completely diverting from what is being asked. Okay? So that is not being asked in the question. Then comes again the strategy to resolve. So guys, in the strategy to resolve, try to bring in different dimensions. Talk about international models, okay, in agriculture. Talk about, again, international models. If you want to quote, you can quote like water related, you can quote Israel. You can talk about Chinese, the whole supply chain thing. You can talk about there. Okay. Then technology, or as such the use of mechanization, you can talk about Europe, you can talk about Western. Legislation is something you can talk about. You can talk about the farmer laws that had been a big issue here. Okay, so multiple angles is something that you can cover here. Recent reforms which are positive, which can be worked upon, like the insurance you can talk about. You can talk about the Kisan Samman Nidhi, that scheme that had started, that can also be included here. Again, It's depending upon you how many angles you can cover in the answer. Okay, so that is one thing that you can do here. I have a question here. Is it a good idea to include above points in strategy to resolve? Ma'am, can we take a stance at the beginning, like right, for and against? There is no for and against here. I think overall you need to keep the tone that smart agriculture is important, but other than that, we've got other legislation and other works also. So there's no anti-point here, Monisha. Yes, PSL, yes, you can write that for smart agriculture also. Jay, Saran, is it a good idea to include above points in strategy to resolve? What above points? Just a moment. Since the question is about agriculture, can we include advantages, that is access to sell agriculture product online and give it? Yes, app related things. And see, again, smart agriculture, what you can do is common technological driven initiatives like eNAM and all these things you can bring in under strategies to resolve them. Okay, because देखो, smart agriculture is more focused upon the new technologies like big data, Internet of Things, and say for example artificial intelligence. Creating a like common platform is not more of an AI related thing. It's just basically common use of technology like e-governance tools. Okay, so you can bring that under strategy to resolve them. Okay, so that can also work here. Okay, and lastly, guys, conclusion. I think if you've skipped out any scheme, then you can bring conclusion here. Okay, government of India related initiative you can talk about. You can talk about committees also. Just say MS Swaminathan committee you can talk about. You can talk about Dalwani committee. Okay, you can make references to them and you can talk about how to, or maybe write there 2-3 recommendations how they can also supplement the idea of smart technology. Okay, and if you have certain international examples of how smart agriculture is being used, that can also be included in the conclusion. Okay, so again, conclusion can always have multiple aspects of your current affairs. Okay, which we are not sure about. Vaibhav. Okay, I think this is a good question to answer that, Vaibhav. For example, I did not knew what smart agriculture is. Okay, so I had no idea whether it's talking about Internet of Things, it's talking about artificial intelligence, anything, any sort of those things. Okay, so I read the question. Obviously, I can make sense that I have to talk about agri economy and issues in agriculture. So I can manage that in the introduction, in the body. Okay, one portion is sorted. About the introduction, again, I know I had to define smart agriculture. So I need to make certain common guesses here, like you can talk about, if you see smart, then maybe you can make a connection, maybe it's related to some technology. Okay, so maybe you're not mentioning exactly that you have to use Internet of Things or AI. Just mention that agriculture and technology go in hand, and that is what the whole idea of smart agriculture is. Okay, or maybe you can give me an idea with respect to how agriculture as a sector is important in the Indian economy. Okay, so what you're doing here is you're actually beating around the bush, but still you're presenting me relevant facts. Okay, Vaibhav? Second part comes again where smart agriculture you had to deal out. This is where you might feel a bit struggle, because if you don't know the exact portion, you'll not be able to produce the whole content. But again, you'll have to make okay, in this portion, don't be somebody who's writing 7-8 points. If you don't know, it's all right. The examiner will know that you're just majorly guessing. So stick to major 2-3 points from common understanding, which you think are relevant here. Okay, so maybe in advantages, instead of 5 points, you just give me 2-3 important points, which you think is connected with technology, and move ahead. The last portion, strategy to resolve, again, you can handle, and conclusion also you can handle. So even if you didn't knew what smart agriculture is, there are 4 portions which you can easily answer without having that knowledge. Are you getting that, Vaibhav? Great. Chandni, how to start mains syllabus is something that we'll deal something later on, because right now we are dealing with how to write the mains answers. Okay, now comes the last portion, that is like my forte. So I am the ethics teacher, and I've been working with a lot of toppers in ethics. Yes, how do you deal with ethics answer? Again, a lot of issues. I think this was a very simple question. This was not a very difficult question according to me. Still, if you faced problem, we'll discuss how to approach them. Okay? Again, guys, on the face of it, I can see the question is divided into 3 portions. Number 1 portion, it's talking about significance of law. Second, it's talking about intuition. And third, it's talking about conscious. So automatically you have 3 headings in the body. Okay? That is something that is pretty evident from the question. Okay? And also it is with relevant to civil servant. So when it's writing with relevant to civil servant, that means you need to have example of civil servants which you will be quoting with respect to law, with respect to intuition, and with respect to conscious. Okay? So that is the major catch that you need to have when you read civil servants here. Okay? So that is about the body. Now, if you look at the body that I've written here, when you will be writing conscious as an answer, there's a very, very high chance that it will come on the second page. Okay? So we could have started with the definition in the first part itself. Like I've written introduction as defined. Why have I written that? Because I am guessing like 80% of you guys might have defined law or conscious or intuition in the introduction. Okay? That is why I wrote define there, which is perfectly fine. Okay? Defining a concept in the introduction is completely legitimate. Attach a definition, an example with it, and you're good to go. Okay? So in ethics, you can start your answer with definition, right? You can start your answer again with current affair linkages. Okay? You can also start your answer with linking it to a thinker or his philosophy or a quote. Okay? That is also one way you can start the introduction. Now, personally, if I talk about, I would not prefer writing definition in the introduction. Why is that? Because I told you key conscious, when you'll be writing, that will come on the second page. Okay, so when the examiner is checking conscious, he'll have to actually turn the page, look at the definition that you've written, and then again go back to that content. Okay, so content wise, it's fine, but presentation wise, it takes a hit. Okay, because when you're presenting any answer, the examiner should have it like a proper organized way in which he sees. So when I'm talking about law as a significance, maybe just before it, in 2 lines, give me the definition of law plus an example. Then if I'm looking at intuition, give me 2 lines of intuition definition and example, and then I see 2-3 points under it. Okay? So that kind of presentation is much more better than separately writing the definition and then talking about these as significance. Okay? So that is about your body and introduction. So what do we do in introduction? So guys, in introduction, make sure that you have at least list of thinkers with the topics which are there actually in your syllabus. So law, intuition, and conscious is actually mentioned in your syllabus. Okay? So what you can do is maybe you can pick up a thinker's definition of law or reference to a law. Okay? You can write that here. Okay? Or if you wanted to say, when you're talking about conscious, you can link Mahatma Gandhi to conscious. Okay? These kind of things you can do in your introduction. Okay? So yes, or if you want to make current affairs reference, just say law ka, if you talk about the law which was created prior, like the first set of farm laws that had come into play, like how they were not ethically sound and how, you know, farmers were at the root of it and how later on it was taken back. Okay? That reference also you can talk about here. Okay? Conscious as part of ethical guidance, again you can talk about, say, ideas of environment versus development. That kind of current affair reference also you can quote in the introduction. Okay? Maybe the recent fake encounters, if you want to quote that UP wala funda with respect to intuition and conscious, that is also you can quote in the introduction. Okay? And if you're not doing that, be ready to quote them in the body. Okay? Ab 3 different portions. Again, be very careful when you're quoting, writing points under it. Make sure they are separate. Like if you're talking about how law serves as an ethical guidance, how does law do that? Number one is it brings uniformity. Okay, it brings uniformity which the civil servants can follow. So what kind of uniformity example can you think of? Code of conduct, right? We have code of civil services rules. Okay, that is part of the law which they have to follow. So you cannot go and drink and go to your job, right? So law is basically setting an ethical guidance, minimum standard that is expected from civil servants. Okay, so that comes out to be first point. Second comes out to be it acts as a deterrence. Okay, the fear of punishment, the fear of being suspended. Okay, that is also a kind of a source of ethical guidance. So if you're caught under for corruption, you can be investigated under Prevention of Corruption Act, right? So that law is actually acting as a source of ethical guidance for civil servants to not engage in activities of corruption. Okay, so I'm actually giving you point, and I'm actually giving you the example of laws also. Are you getting the point here? Okay, so that is very, very important in ethics. If you're not able to link it to the application partner, your content becomes very, very generic. Okay, so be very careful when you're writing the content in ethics. Link it to as much application, as much current scenario, as much current affairs as you can. Okay, so that is one part of how law can, act as an ethical guidance. What else do you think? See, again, rules and regulations, okay, the legal sanctions which are set by law, they also act as an ethical guidance. Again, like in case of many regulation body, we have a set of rules and regulations which are set for them. Okay, so if you're taking any decision in future, for example, tender, if you're rolling out any tender, you have certain set of rules and regulations which are already provided to you. So obviously they also act as an ethical guidance. So in case of implementation, daily implementation, law is also acting as a guidance for you as a civil servant, right? So that is one way. Let's talk about intuition. Now, intuition, how does intuition help you? So guys, intuition is something that comes with experience. Okay, so if you have a lot of field experience as a civil servant, okay, you'll be able to grasp, for example, you've worked in a district for a very long time. So you'll be able to grasp the problem and work at, daily problem solving of there much more better because of your experience, which comes from intuition. Okay, so as an experience, intuition acts as a major ethical guidance. Okay, second is if some new problem comes into your face. For example, when we had COVID, so in COVID we had nothing that had come to us in previous scenarios. Okay, that was completely new. So a lot of civil servants were actually acting on their intuition, maybe based upon the experience they have up till now. But the idea is tackling any new challenge, maybe day to day or as a policy making, comes into play with intuition acting as an ethical source of guidance. Okay, so if we had the problem of, say, oxygen cylinders being smuggled and loaded at one place in COVID, that was also solved with the idea of intuition. Okay, so intuition comes into play in these kind of scenarios. Even in disaster management, intuition plays very, very important role, because in disaster management you have to take decisions within seconds. Okay, so that kind of accuracy can only come if you have the right intuition. Okay, so that place is also where intuition acts as an ethical guidance. Okay, you have a cyclone, for example, there's a cyclone coming into place in Gujarat right now. Okay, so how do you manage quick decision making with respect to awareness, responding, evacuation? Everything that comes into play is actually you work with your intuition at that point of time. Because see, the third portion is conscious. Conscious is something which is very broader. Okay, it's like more of a long-term kind of a thing, more of a value-attached thing. Okay, conscious कैसे काम कर रहा है? आपके सामने आए कोई ethical dilemma, conflict of interest, कि आपका personal interest versus your professional interest is in clash, and that is where conscious comes into play. Okay, you have a policy making decision with respect to, say, should I support the scheduled tribes and their livelihood versus development? So that kind of scenario comes into dealing with conscious. You have a scenario where you have communal rights coming into play. Okay? That is where your conscious will come into play. You have a scenario where your caste member is coming and complaining about somebody else, and you have to take a like agitation that had happened. There was a report submitted by Prakash Singh, who is an retired IPS officer, who said that a lot of IS officers and IPS officers did not take action during the Jat agitation because they thought that their caste, like their members from their caste, were justified in asking for reservation. So that is where we have compromise of our conscience coming into play as a civil servant, because you are not supposed to act on your caste based decision here. You're a civil servant, you're serving the constitution, right? So that is the part that you can actually talk about in the conscious part. Okay. Finally comes your way forward. Now, what do you include in way forward here? You can talk about how law, intuition, and conscious can actually be improved in our civil services together. Like, for example, if you talk about law, talk about bringing about code of ethics, code second ARC there. Okay. When you talk about intuition, talk about how field experience should be improved for civil services. Like Bharat Darshan is just one form, but we know we need more field work rather than desk work to improve the idea of intuition, connecting with the people. When you connect with the people, you're able to empathize and sympathize with them more. How can conscious be improved? Again, sensitization training, having the right role models. If you have a role model, like your mentor in civil services who's already corrupt, how can you develop the right conscious there? Okay, so these are certain measures, like even during your training in Labasna, conscious and intuition is something that we can build upon. Okay, so these are the solutions that you can provide. Again, in ethics, be very careful that you're providing the right solutions. Don't be very generic in writing the answers. Okay, that is very, very important, right? So I think a very heavy session for you guys. So that was it, guys, for the 4 questions. Any short doubts here? I can quickly take some doubts here. Okay, go ahead, guys. So that was it actually from my side. So this was actually basically a recap of how we go about in our RMGP series. Okay, if you want to talk about it, you can connect with Priyanka and Ankur. I've shared their numbers here. You can call them up. Again, if you're preparing for 2024, I would recommend you to start answer writing as soon as possible so that you can build around these concepts and make your notes, which are already present when you're writing mains next year. Okay, so that is very, very important. If you're attempting in 23, then I don't think you have any time. Just start, get a mentor, talk to the mentor, and start preparing for your answers. Okay. You're welcome, Jay. You're a UAP student. That's great. Okay. Excellent, and you're part of Samachar. Okay, great, Jay. So I hope you've understood the idea and you'll be writing your mains answer properly. Rohit, you're asking whether Rohit, you have to write a paper first to get a discussion. Okay. So the whole idea here with respect to answer writing in RMGP is first give a paper, okay, and then we'll have a discussion. So that is the whole idea there. Any further questions here that you want me to answer, guys? Because then we'll end the session. It's been a very long session already. I'll share the numbers that I was talking about in the chat box also, if you want to reach out to them. Okay. So I hope this session was actually pretty thoughtful for you, because I think I actually talked about the major mistakes that a lot of students make in their answers. Okay. I think if you understand these problems, it'll help you to resolve the problems that you're facing very quickly. People are saying that, okay, is this... Yes, Monisha. See, the idea is you write the paper and then the whole paper is discussed with you. Like, what are the major issues in your problem? Like right now, I was talking as a third person who's not seen your sheet. So obviously, when you've written your answer will be shared with a mentor, and he will look at your answer and discuss the problem in your answer. Okay, so it's more personalized. The whole idea is personalized mentorship here. Okay. I think Alok, again, I answered the question. It's based upon the frequency of paper that you're writing. You write a paper and then you have a proper discussion on that paper. That is how the mains test series revolves around. Okay. Okay, guys, I think we've been connected for like more than 1.5 hours now. So I'll take your leave now. But if you have any other doubts, we are always there, and we are always coming up with new webinars that you can attend and get your information about how to prepare for civil services. And this is basically a free initiative that we carry on for you guys. So excellent. Hope to see you guys in future somewhere, right? And all the best for your preparation, especially the people who are attempting for 23. Start your answer writing as soon as possible. And for 24, the sooner, the better. Take care, guys, and good night. All the best.